I'm Ron Clements, co-director of Moana.
And I'm John Musker, the other co-director of Moana. And
I believe we've known each other for about 39-ish years.
as we were looking for ideas for films, we pitched to John Lasseter the idea of a story set in the Pacific Islands. John loved the Pacific Islands, but he said, of course, you've got to do more research, you got to dig deeper into this whole world. Those things led to a trip for us to the Pacific Islands.
Before the trip, we just thought it was a fun arena, an exotic location. But I think the trip really affected us a lot. But I don't think we expected the trip to affect us emotionally as much as it did.
For all of us, going to the islands was a very emotional experience. The warmth of the people, the way we were welcomed in was incredible for all of us.
One of the most stirring experiences was when we met Papa Mape, who was one of the elders in Tahiti. And he was the one that said to us, for years, we've been swallowed by your culture. One time, can you be swallowed by our culture?
We really felt an obligation to do right by Papa Mape and by the people that we had met.
The trip was almost 3 weeks long, and we started in Fiji and then made our way to Samoa.
While we were in Samoa, we did go to Sabai, which is an island off Upolu, the main island of Samoa.
And then ended up in Tahiti.
We also went to Huahine, which is off of Tahiti, another small island, and Moorea.
Future trips included many trips to many of the Pacific Islands. And finally to New Zealand.
We wanted to talk to people who had lived on islands their whole lives and how that affected way of thinking. And when people talked about the land and the sea, they said the land and the sea are one and the same.
In the Pacific, we don't consider the water a barrier to each other. It's not just the cultures of the people and the islands that connect us, but it's also the ocean that connects us. Our ocean takes up 1/3 of the Earth's surface. If we were to be considered a political region, we would be the biggest region on Earth.
Everywhere you looked, you saw water, and in fact, some of them talked about almost being physically ill if they were too far away from water for any given time.
Where I was brought up, not very far from the shore, I got used to hearing the sea, and coming to New Zealand and being locked in 4 walls, that was quite a frightening experience.
When we were in Fiji, a navigator, fisherman, sailor named Angel, who was the talking chief of the village, he took us out on the water in a traditional canoe.
And right away, we're on the boat out on the ocean, he started talking about the ocean. And he said, you have to speak gently to the ocean. And he implied that if you don't treat the ocean with respect, that it can be sensitive about that, as if it were alive, as if it were a real person.
Nice water. The ocean is a friend of mine.
That was something we Midwesterners, you know, it was something foreign to us.
I never met the ocean till I came to California when I was 18. So
Yeah.
I had to develop that relationship. And I don't swim, which was another factor.
Yeah,
And that
yeah, we're both not great swimmers. I swim better than he does, but we're not great swimmers.
The ocean knows. The ocean knows what you're feeling. The ocean knows what you're thinking.
We actually both independently write notes and ideas and just things that
Impressions that
occur to
grow
us.
out of the trip,
And
yeah.
then after we've done that brainstorm, then we compare notes.
And independently, we both, based on what we had heard in the Pacific, felt like we've got to make the ocean a character in the movie.
We do animation. Wow, this is going to be amazing. Turning the ocean into a character in our movie.
We felt like we really need to put these ideas in the movie, and to do that, we felt we really had to reapproach the story from the start. The one thing that we kept from the earlier version was the character of Maui. He was more even the star of the earlier version.
What I believe you were trying to say is thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
In the new version, we focused on the story on the experience of this young teenage girl who dreams of being a navigator.
Moana is a word in Proto-Polynesian to mean ocean. It means ocean in many of the Polynesian languages.
So I think it was Ron's idea, why don't we name the lead character Moana?
We learned so much about the history of navigation and how important navigation was to the people and their cultural identity.
I just keep emphasizing how great my ancestors were. They were the best sailors, best navigators throughout the world.
When we do voyage, and in order to make sure that we're keeping our art alive, we do navigate traditionally. So no GPS, we use whatever nature gives us, what nature shares with us.
The scholars believe the people that the academics call the Lapita people came from around the area of Taiwan.
There's the migration from west to east. And they get to our part of the world about 3,000, 3,500 years ago.
How great the Polynesian navigators were, how them finding their way across the sea was the equivalent of us sending a man to the moon, that they could do something that amazing using no mechanical instruments whatsoever.
It wasn't a factor of just hitting one point of reference. It was hitting that point of reference constantly. So for example, Rapa Nui, it's far out, there's no land, and 1,000 miles from there, it's a little dot in the Pacific, and you actually have to try to aim for that dot. And our ancestors repeatedly hit that dot.
This was long before the Vikings or the European explorers. They really were the greatest navigators the world has ever seen. It is an achievement, I think, that people in the Western world are not as aware of.
They're able to find their way back home and back to the islands again, using only their observation of nature, of how the stars move.
Memorizing star patterns, when these stars actually rise, at what declination, during what time of the year.
So you need to memorize everything. You keep track of where the stars are against the light of dawn. And that is all just memorizing where you come from. And so that's how you tell position.
There is a hand gesture that you do where you're measuring this distance and you would line your thumb up to the horizon. If we tilt it and line this exactly up, that's the correct thing to do.
The navigator on a voyage couldn't sleep either. If you fell asleep, you could lose your way.
For my boat!
It couldn't have been easy
They would look at the reflection of clouds, and there was some green on the bottom of the cloud. That meant there would be an island there. They tracked the flight of seabirds. In the evening, they were returning to land. They could use that to find their way.
According to the scholars, about 3,000 years ago, the migration stopped. They stopped in the area of Samoa, Tonga, Fiji. If there is a location for our fictional island of Motunui, that's where it is. And then, 1,000 years later, they picked up again. No one knows why they stopped. No one knows why they started again. And they continued to Tahiti, later to Hawaii, and finally to New Zealand. Once they got to New Zealand, the whole Pacific was pretty much settled.
For 1,000 years, they didn't do it, and we could work that into the story, a fantasy reason both for why it stopped and why it resumed again. And it could revolve around this 16-year-old heroine who's fascinated with navigation.
It was a complete jumping off point for us, for our story. And I was like, that's perfect. That's a perfect mystery to tell a story about.
We say in Tahitian, ahi o to moa, and that means look at your mountain. You have to know your mountain.
We heard that expression in Tahiti for the first time, and it was explained that your mountain is really everything that led up to you, your lineage, all the people who came before you.
They talked about if you didn't know where you came from, you didn't really know who you were.
Family is everything. So the whole village is your family, and not in a very blasé, offhand way. You know, that saying, it takes a village to raise a baby. It's very true here.
You are the next great chief of our people.
And you'll do wondrous things, my little minnow.
Growing up in the village, the feeling of the community was very, very strong. There was lots of singing and dancing, celebrations. It was a very, very poor upbringing, but very rich in so many other areas. The whole environment, the village, being together, celebrating anything, and we did everything together. That has always stayed with me.
We had many magical times on the islands. Everyone gets together in this open pavilion, kind of a public fale. The children are all there. Usually there's food that people have cooked with so much love, and it's just all shared.
In the village, they welcomed us in and they said, hey, you know, now you're a part of our family and we think of you as one of us, and that was very moving.
There's this extended responsibility and relationship where everything is shared, and giving is more important than receiving.
In the Pacific, one thing that sort of noticed was that teenagers are actually likable. They just seem so sincere and friendly and nice. Moana represents a lot of those qualities that we experience. She loves her people, she loves her village.
There's a closeness to the grandparents. There's some of the kids that we saw, and we really drew on that, and that became the basis for Grandma Tala.
We are really happy that Disney has brought this relationship between Moana and her grandmother, and the way also the grandmother will tell the story at the beginning.
Te Ka and the demons of the deep still hunt for the heart.
We come from oral traditions. We didn't write things down in the way that we write things down today.
My grandmothers, both sides, were telling us stories of Maui, of all the heroes of that time, and also of our ancestors. How did we arrive over there, about migration, about the canoes, about voyaging, about, you know, between islands. And this is what they fed us, I mean, like every night, you know, that was our, you know, candy if we have behaved well.
But one day, the heart will be found.
One of the things we noticed when we went to the islands is just how much singing and music there was everywhere.
Music is really in us.
These beautiful people in South Pacific the way they lived, the ancestors. You know, there is a spiritual element in there.
The singing was so unique. People just sang out so forcefully with their heart.
I remember saying to John, you know, what I've found with my students, everyone can sing. And he was fascinated. He was like, everyone can sing? And I went, practically, yeah. There's not that many people that don't have a good ear. I think it's just being in the village, you're singing from young and being around church. Church is such a huge part of our culture now.
We heard this great children's choir, which was so powerful. It was White Sunday, all the kids dressed in white, and they sang these hymns. They would just transport you. It was the most beautiful singing I've ever heard.
Dancing is very important because this is the way islanders are, you know, telling their stories and live their stories. So everyone is on the same canoe, we'll say. Let's all sit in the same canoe and we paddle together. You have the eyes moving, you have the hands moving, you have the body as well. So this is what we remember when we look at our grandmothers or our grandfather.
You know, we went through a few movements of doing the sa-sa with the clapping. Because we all move very, very differently in between each of the islands.
The movement itself is a fusion of your original Polynesian Tonga and Samoa and Fijian moves. You will see some Hawaiian, Modi and Tahitian. It's all Polynesian.
If you do the hand like this, that means of the ocean, or this might mean something grounded.
I came up here to do a little presentation on the haka, its origins, particular to our tribe, the people of Taranaki.
You're doing great.
Is it done yet?
Tattoos are such a part of the culture, so we really wanted to celebrate the culture of the tattoo because it's part of their true heritage. Tattoos, they're really a rite of passage.
It's a must for every man to go through this journey when you're ready to supply for your family.
It takes days to do, and it's very painful.
12 days. It's the most painful thing that you can ever do in your life. If you want to take the journey, you gotta feel every single strike. You get to know so much more about yourself and the responsibilities of being a man in a family.
There's a meaning to the way things intertwine that tell you things about their family, about their own stories.
You know, you use books, you use computers, you know. Us, we use our bodies. The history is on our bodies. From the beginning, on the top is the canoe, is how we settle, is how we travel. And then the structure is actually the culture. By the end of it, it's a shelter. And so our body is a shelter of our culture.
Ow! We wanted to put all of Maui's great exploits on him in a way that a Western audience could understand. So we cheated some of them a little bit less abstract than some of the tattoos we saw there. But working with Peter, they were based on tattoos we saw in Samoa.
I think for Maui's character to have all those tattoos, I thought it was really cool because they're all meant to represent his amazing feats. And tattoos are part of the way to record. You know, that's how we remember.
I'm going to come back as one of these. Or I chose the wrong tattoo.
Certainly from our experience on the islands, the respect for nature is very prevalent. They realize if you abuse your resources, if you don't nurture the land, things can go bad really, really quickly. We heard the expression, you don't own the land owns you.
That is something else that really affected me when we were there, and that was that everything was made right there and recyclable.
You use everything, you don't waste anything, and the coconut tree is the best example of that.
They call it the tree of life because there's so much that grows out of the coconut.
There's 1,000,001 ways to use a coconut, and we've probably found all of them. You can eat the flesh and cook the flesh in a multitude of ways.
You can drink the milk of the coconut.
The flesh can be shredded, and we get oil from that.
The leaves of the coconut tree are very useful.
We take the spine of the leaf, and we gather them together, and they can be a really nice broom that we use to sweep the floors with.
You can use the fiber of the coconut to make sennet, which is rope, which they can use for boats, for fishing, for building houses.
It's an important drink. It's part of our rituals. It's part of ceremonies. Every single part of the coconut and the tree can be used and has been used and still is used by our cultures and other cultures in the region.
It's a natural thing, you know, it's not artificial, it's part of nature.
It was amazing to me. We're not all in touch with what you can do with what's around you.
Consider the coconut, consider its trees. Use each part of the coconut, it's all we need.
We make our nets from the fibers. The water is sweet inside. We use the leaves to build fires. We cook up the meat inside.
Shoot, shoot.
There's a big superstructure to the movie that has to do with nature and that how we're supposed to respect nature, both land and sea. The whole movie, in some ways, is about restoring that balance that came out of someone not respecting nature.
And I think people who live on islands are on the forefront of issues that the whole world is dealing with right now.
They felt like they were more connected to it, that it was such a part of their lives.
We really wanted people from the area to be involved with the movie, and that led to the creation of what we called our Oceanic Story Trust, which was a group of people we met in the South Pacific.
The brother started kind of talking like Maui didn't exist. It was a little hard, it was a little weird.
Experts really in their fields, whether it's as an expert fisherman or as an expert master tattoo artist or musicologist, anthropologist, archaeologist, linguist.
In our minds, all the way along, it was really, you know, when the local people see this movie, we want to make sure that when they see it, they're going to recognize it. It may not matter to a lot of people, but for the local people who recognize their culture and their dances and their tattoos, it's really important. It's really, really done well.
It's probably one of the things I respect the most about this whole process. The directors and the producers and a lot of the animators and illustrators have come here not just once, you know, not just twice. They've come over and over and cared enough to involve us in this.
Living here and meeting everybody, it's a great honor to be part of that.
We would pitch ideas to them. We would send them drawings of characters and get reactions to the way certain things look.
And they would visit us too.
And then I got to Disney and I went, wow. To see Mickey Mouse and hear the Pacific music coming on over the screen, like I was just burst into tears.
And we made changes all along the way based on the input that we got.
A real dramatic one for me was, for a very long time, Maui was designed bald. He had no hair.
A whole group from Tahiti were visiting the studio, and when they saw the character of Maui, they said, no, no, no. Maui has hair, he has long hair. That's part of his mana, that's part of his power.
Another example is there's a scene in the very beginning where Moana wants to go out and be a Voyager, and she's upset that her father says, no, you can't.
She's so mad at him. And so the way our story artist drew it, she was just tossing coconuts up in the air and just whacking at him out into the ocean. And we showed it to Dion, and she said, you know, nobody would be doing that.
It's not really about the sacredness of the coconut, but it's more so about the fact that it is a food source, and you're destroying property that's shared by everybody. So for a kid to be acting out and then smashing coconuts would be probably bad news for the kid.
We adjusted that, and there's a whole different way she expresses her sort of frustration.
It has the same energy, the same feel, not disrespecting the coconut.
It's the harvest.
When I came over to Disney and was working with them in the studios, it was more about hair.
Fiona had this beautiful hair that our animators were fascinated with because we really wanted to get Polynesian hair in the movie. So when Fiona was here, they shot extensive footage of her with her hair swaying and moving and turning.
I can't even tell you, it was just hilarious. No, I just had to wet it, and then I just had to stand there and move it, and there's a whole team of about 20 people.
Hair in this movie, I think, is the best hair we've ever done, I think, because it literally grew out of her head, grew out of our heads and her head.
Moana has my hair, but the thing is, I'm so generically Samoan that, you know, this hair belongs to all of us.
Well, when we first started looking at casting the film, one of the things that Ron, John, and I felt was very important was to see if we could cast the movie with people that have roots in the Pacific Islands.
And we really went for the best actor we could find.
First, we get my hook. Then save the world. Deal? Deal.
We always thought Dwayne would be a great idea for the character.
Yeah, we never
of
auditioned
Maui.
anyone else for Maui.
The biggest reason I wanted to be a part of the movie was it was the opportunity to showcase a culture that's very important to me. It was the opportunity to showcase my culture.
He has this incredible quality. He can say almost anything, and you still like him for it.
It's actually Maui, shapeshifter, demigod of the wind and sea, hero of men.
Particularly with the character Moana, we really wanted to get someone from the islands if we could. The trick was, in an ideal world, she'd be the right age, she could sing beautifully and act wonderfully.
We put out an open call around the world. Then on the very last day of casting in Hawaii, our casting director remembered somebody she'd heard.
We got to this one tape, and it was like, wait a minute, it just, right there was something that
Stood out from the others.
You're trying to act like you know why the ocean chose you.
My people didn't send me. The ocean did.
I've never done anything like this. I did backyard plays and I sang in the choir, but aside from that, this would be my first real role. It chose me for a reason. And the fact that I come from this culture, it feels so good.
It's probably our big discovery on the movie was Ali'i, and we were so lucky to find her.
You hear her in the movie, and it's like the first 10, 15 minutes, you're like, oh, this is gonna be good. And then she starts singing. It's mic drop, it's game over.
I wish I could be the perfect daughter, but I come back to the water, no matter how hard I try.
And then for the rest of the cast, we pretty much cast the whole movie from Pacific Islanders, except for one role.
Hey, the chicken. The only character in the movie that was voiced by a non-Polynesian that Alan Tudyk does.
I went to Julia.
Boat snack!
When we left the islands, we felt like we had been changed, and we had a little bit of a different point of view.
I think I can say without any hesitation that we've created some imbalances with nature at this time. And the navigators, literally, their technology was about observing nature, about being in relationship with nature. I would love for anyone, kids, grown-ups, anyone to come out of this movie and go, you know what, I'm gonna go pause and just take a look at that sunset.
We felt like we made this connection and that we owed it to them to try and do a story that they would feel represented their culture accurately and in the spirit, respectfully, basically.
And that was what we tried to do with the movie, and that makes me very happy.
It was a joy. It really was a joy to actually work on this movie because it's about my ancestors, my children.
What I really thought about was my nieces and my nephews. If they were going to watch this, and I knew they were going to watch it no matter what, I wanted them to see this film and recognize themselves in it. What I guess I'm most proud of is the fact that I was able to contribute to it. I was able to win some of the arguments in crafting a story that I think is respectful of our culture.
My granddaughter was just born. Like, it's just so gratifying knowing that she's going to grow up being able to see herself on screen. And it's specifically Pacific, which is what's going to reach out to our young women and give them a voice.
You know, our culture is very important for us because it's the spirit, it's the soul of our island, and it carries values, it carries our life. And I know today we are striving to promote our culture to our children. As Papa Mape will say, he said, for so many years, we've been swallowed by your culture. May this movie make you swallowed by ours.